Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pure Presence Live, the book club covering the nature of consciousness, Rupert Spira's wonderful book. We're in chapter 12 this week, and I'm very happy to have all of you with us. And I'm happy to have, uh, I think you said Vivian. Did she say Vivian? Did you,
Yes, yes, yes.
Vivian?
Yeah,
We have Vivian in the call-in feature. Welcome, Vivian.
thank you.
And yes, and this week we have Anneke from Holland on as our guest, and welcome, Anneke. We're so happy. I'm so happy to have you on the show again.
Thank you. I'm happy too.
Yes,
Yeah, I'm happy to be with you and everybody. Yeah.
thank you. Can you turn your light on just a little bit so we can see your face a little better? Yeah, there we go. Perfect. And I just Anneke has borrowed I think you borrowed a computer from somebody, but it
Yeah.
was that she was on her iPad and the iPhone. And so I'm very happy for all of our friends to be able to see you this
Yeah.
week. And welcome you guys that are on the video feature, Andrea and Catherine. And let me see if I can see who else is with us. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this chapter. I just love how Rupert he sort of says the same thing, not over and over, but some things he says three or four different ways, the same thing, just so that if you didn't get it this way, maybe you'll get it this way. And I just this chapter this week, the focusing of consciousness, it's just like all the rest. It has rich content. As I'm reading it, I just want to I just want to be in Rupert's head. I just want to I say to myself when I read his words, the way he describes the consciousness, the way he describes what's happening in my own experience, in my own psyche. And then he explains how this happens. I just say to myself, oh my God, what it must be to be in Rupert's head coming up with all of this. You know what I mean, Anneke?
Well, I think for him it's natural. That feels that way. That he is so precise, so meticulously precise. And when you see him in retreats, he also first he retreats back, and then he senses into what he really is, and lets come up what comes up. And I don't feel that he's burdened or whatsoever with it, but
Yeah.
it's rich for sure. Yeah,
Well, you know
yeah,
who else has that gift? Hi, Henrik. Welcome. We're happy to have you with us this week. Uh, Jenny has that gift. She really is like a female version of Rupert. She is just so precise and she's so exact.
yeah, yeah.
And she also has that. And I feel, Anneke, and one of the things that has attracted me to your expression and also to our other guests, Kimberly as well, there's an evolution, there's an evolving awakening, or there's an evolving nature of consciousness that seems to it's like it's creation in manifest, where when we begin to get it, when we begin to understand a little bit, all of a sudden the floodgates of understanding seem to open up for us. And I don't feel that anyone is special in that way. I feel that we're all special, and I feel that the beings that are expressing are looking at Rupert's work are just really finding that uh, Rupert's expression where it allows it to come alive. It allows the experience of enlightenment to not be so mysterious, but to be not only understood, but understood to be available for all of us, for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can check it. You can
David,
check anything he says.
pardon me?
You can check anything he says.
Yes, yes. David, are you looking at the chat yet, Anneke? Can you see the
No,
chat?
I
There's
enable chat.
there's a
Where
little
do I click?
box there, and there's a sprocket, and you click right under the sprocket. You'll see a little thing that looks like a notepad, and if you hover over it, it
Well,
says
it has a long notepad. It says enable chat. All messages are public. Display number of attendees.
just
Where do I?
on chat.
Okay, enable.
And here it says David Spector. Welcome, David. It says this chapter was difficult because the mind cannot understand the mind using the mind.
No.
The interactions between infinity and limitations require more than just limitations to understand.
Yeah.
And so he points out how our understanding must be partial. Yeah, he really does an amazing job of explaining how we have to sort of go to sleep from the infinite self in order to limit to be limited enough to where we have the experience of time and space and perception. And Anneke, I would just love to hear what are your favorite parts of this chapter? Do you have a couple of favorites?
I just thought for fun to show you, just just for fun to show you what my book looks like.
Oh yeah, it looks like a playground that someone's been.
Everything is favorite. And the more often I read it, the more I underline, the more I circle, the more I write.
I know.
But but on the very, very first page, he says actually the core of the chapter, and I've written it here up here. Mind is consciousness, emotion. Consciousness is mind at rest. And then all experience is a movement of mind, and mind is a vibration of consciousness, appearing in consciousness, known by consciousness, made of consciousness. That's the whole story of the book. That's it.
Yes.
And what I love about it is we can really experience that. We can find that. We can know that. Because when we rest back as I am, for instance, by the question, am I aware? And we withdraw the attention from the appearances back to that question,
Yeah.
we end up in that ever present, silent, open, knowing beingness where no mind is.
Yeah.
It's empty in that sense. Still
Yeah.
alive, a lot of aliveness, but empty of things.
Yeah.
And when attention or awareness in the form of attention focuses and I, consciousness, am a mind, then the whole thing starts to open up into experiences. And we can see that too, because when attention withdraws from experience, we know we are silent, ever present being.
Yeah.
But when attention starts to focus on thoughts and feelings and the body, etc., a whole display of this of consciousness in form is experienced. And we also can feel that when we follow thought or mind into stories, into feelings, especially the ones that we rather not want, because me is made out of resistance. It's separation. So the more we go into that, the more we can feel our body contract. And the more we step back as awareness, we feel our system open again. So it's literally possible to experience, to play with that, to
Yes.
let attention go into a story, just to find out, what does it do? What is it? What happens? To go into a horror image fantasy and to go into it and follow thought and follow while staying aware as being aware and just watching. And then you can see it so beautifully. But what I love in the chapter is that he says that no matter how dense it seems or contracted, no matter the appearance, it still is the ever present, unlimited, boundless, aware being. And that can also be checked the other way around because in a certain stage we know, oh, I am awareness and I see thoughts and I experience life and sensations. But we can also go to the experiences or let the experiences come to us as I consciousness. So first we bypass everything. We know, okay, I am awareness. I am this conscious being. And then let these feelings, especially the difficult ones, come to me and go closer and closer. It's all a metaphor, of course, but come closer and closer until you step right into it. And what do you find? Yourself, I consciousness.
Yes.
So it's either out or in. When we zoom in enough, we find the very same stuff out of which everything is made.
Yeah.
And that's an ongoing process. I'm not saying I'm feeling that the whole day, but I contemplate that. And
Right.
Rupert has these beautiful meditations that help you see that. And I mentioned that before, and last time somebody asked me about it, and it is this book.
Oh, yes. Transparent body, luminous world. Yeah.
Yes, and it has 24 meditations
Hmm.
that can help us experience being the open space of awareness, the loving space that dances as everything. And it can also help us experience to go the other way, to come so close to the experience that there it doesn't have a name anymore. It's just unlimited being too.
Yeah.
And I love that about him because he has this pedantic way. I'm not this, I'm not that. I'm awareness, I'm not limited, and so forth. And I am that. And I'm also that. I consciousness am also that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so complete.
Yeah. And the, it does introduce the experience as a person with the knowing of our divine self, with the knowing of awareness and the beingness of that. At the same time, we can we can have the experience of the finite self, all the while knowing that's not that's not the totality of what I am. The totality of what I am is always undisturbed at my discretion when I relax attention from the perception of what's occurring, when I relax attention from the identity of body. I also find that I'm not given to reacting to the experiences that the identity of person is having by the maturing of my own understanding and by the practice of being aware, by the practice of the stillness of just sitting and being. And sitting and being is the experience of meditation as presence. Meditation as awareness is experiencing awareness in the gap between the thoughts and between the words and between the thinking or feeling or sensing experiences, we can have the experience of our divine being. And
It's
there's
self-knowledge. Yeah.
yes, it's total, it's where perception is relaxed into knowing. And in that knowing experience, I could stay there forever. In fact, we all do. This is where and this is why I love Rupert's meditations so much, because his meditations cause me to relax into the knowingness of the being, where there's no beginning, there's no end, there's no age, and there's no gender there.
Yes, it's nameless.
Yes. And what I love, the very first, or the first paragraph of this chapter 12, it talks about in the Gospel of St. Thomas. I love what he has to say here. He says, if people ask, Jesus says, if people ask you, what sign of your Father is in you, tell them it is a movement and a rest.
Yes. Yes.
And this is our experience. This is where the joy comes in, because now we're no longer lost in a sleeping mind that thinks it's a person and has a personal self identity, but we get to have our understanding, or our cake of understanding, and we get to also eat it. We also get to have the experience of our understanding.
Yes. Yes, it's great because what I just said, when we rest back, rest the attention back, it's quiet, it's unmoving, and it's contemplating the nature of consciousness. I saw another question somewhere. What is consciousness? That's beautiful too, that question. What is consciousness? Because when we rest back and just sit like that, what is it? It's unreal. It's the most real, but it's unreal beautiful to feel into that and to know it is unmoving, but it's not dead, and
Yeah,
and it can arise as anything,
yeah,
anything.
yes. Well, and also in this chapter 12, on page 110,
Mm-hmm.
there's a paragraph that Rupert refers to, and he says, if there is nothing in consciousness other than itself, how can it know something other than its own eternal, infinite being,
Yeah,
such as an object, person, or world?
yeah.
And the reason I love this question is because I have heard many times from different questioners along the path and in different
Mm-hmm.
circles that I've
Mm-hmm.
been involved in. If God doesn't know about this place, which is a term that people have used, if God doesn't know about this place, how did this happen? How
Yeah,
how did this happen? And of course, you have to go into the mind that believes that it happened to even get an answer. You have to get an answer to that. Is
yeah,
the question is being asked from the finite self. But the way Rupert puts it, he he uses a lot of the words. A lot of times he'll use it seems to have happened.
yeah,
It didn't really happen. It just, in order for us to have the experience that seems like it happened, we had to go to sleep, or we had to forget our infinite self, and dream or imagine that we're having this experience
yeah,
of a finite self.
yeah. But
And
the miracle is that at the same time it is real. I mean, we do see trees and clouds, and I mean, it's there are perceptions, and when deeply looked into, ultimately it's as empty as this is,
Yes.
but
Well,
it
and
can appear as objective experience. Yeah,
right, right. And when you use the word real, you have to define, okay, what is real?
yeah,
What is real?
yeah,
What is
yeah, yeah,
really real?
yeah,
And and this is where the words fail, or
yeah,
they stop giving information, because reality is that it is that anything that is perishable
yes.
is what is illusory.
Yeah,
And what is the body's eyes see, and what is sense perception, and what is the experience of time and space that's not perishable,
yeah,
right?
right.
So reality is the knowing of the being that we are.
Hmm.
And when we know the and I love the way Rupert points to the experience, that we can know this for ourselves.
Yeah,
And if you've been to his workshops, you know, and many of you that are on this call today have been to his workshops, but if you haven't been and you've watched his YouTube videos, he will tell you, don't believe what I say. Don't believe what you read. Have the experience for
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
There is proof of what is being offered here. The proof is, am I aware? And when you investigate that question, it brings you immediately back to the experience of being. It brings you back, it reverses you out of the mind into the knowing of the self.
yeah.
And it works the same for everyone. And I can just imagine, of course, I don't know what a mosquito or a squirrel or a cat or a dog or an animal thinks, if they think, but they all have to be aware. If you watch an animal, they're always, I mean, there's nothing that's not, a mosquito couldn't land on you to stick its tentacles into your skin if it wasn't aware of its experience, right?
I, it must be, because everything is made out of I consciousness. So it must be. And
Yeah,
and what I love about it is I am. I consciousness am. Without being, no consciousness. Without consciousness, no being.
yes,
That's one and the same. Knowing and being. It's
yeah,
one. And that we can discover that. That
yeah,
is so beautiful.
yeah. That's what I most love about Rupert's pointing, is that you can prove what he says for your own experience.
Yeah.
You can prove it
Yeah.
very simply from your own experience. And I'm just going to go ahead and read the paragraph that answers the question that I just read, that how can it know something other than its own eternal infinite being? And Rupert says the infinite can only know the infinite. And this is what is meant by God doesn't even know about this place. The infinite doesn't even know about this place,
No.
because this is a dream that is occurring in the mind, that has been, what Rupert would say, has modulated, or has imagined itself or limited itself into having an experience that's not real, or that's not true, or that's not infinite.
That seems
And
limited.
that seems limited. He says the infinite can only know the infinite. The finite can only know the finite. One might then wonder if infinite consciousness and the finite mind never know one another. How is it possible for experience to be known, and by whom? Given that infinite consciousness is all that is truly present, In other words, what is the relationship between infinite consciousness and the finite mind? The question is resolved by understanding that infinite consciousness and the finite mind are not two separate existing entities. The latter is a temporary modulation of the former.
Yes. The mind knows the world through it is the consciousness itself that knows. There's no other that knows, really. When we lean back and we investigate what we really are, I consciousness, that is always here. That is what sees, what knows, what experiences. But it experiences as if it focuses as a mind into that world. But it's the knowing with which it's known is still I consciousness. It's still I.
Yes, yes. Henrik was asking what page it's at. This is
Oh,
in
yeah.
the middle of page 110.
Yeah.
And then if you go over to page 111, Rupert says consciousness dreams the world within itself and simultaneously loses itself in its own dream.
Yeah. Like us in the night.
Yes. Yeah. I just love the way
Yeah.
Rupert writes. And
Yeah.
if you go to the top of page 112, he says, the world of objects is a reflection of the limitations inherent in the perceiving subject. However, if the apparently separate subject of experience explores its own nature by turning the knowing with which it normally knows objective experience upon itself, it is divested of its self assumed limitations and stands revealed as infinite consciousness.
Yeah.
And
When we when yeah.
that's where the question gets answered. That's the whole self-discovery, the inquiry of what is it that is aware of the experience. That's what he's talking about.
Yeah. And what is beautiful, again, the experiential um, experience, is that imagine we look at the sky and we have called it sky. We think it's a sky, and I am seeing a sky. But when we ask who we really are, what it is, so we first are aware of being aware, we know ourselves to be that, and then look at the sky and see what happens. That's the whole thing. Then you will discover that the sky is what you are. There
Yes,
is no limitation.
that's right.
It,
Yeah.
so when we look as awareness, as what we really are, so first check, am I aware? Am I this awareness? I'm here. I'm always here. I'm present. And then look at objective experience and you will find yourself. And that you can continuously, when you think about it, you can do that.
Yes.
And then it's not thought, like the mind can think, is this a sky? No, it's open. No use.
Yes. Yes. And it's the it almost requires, if you don't have an understanding, I don't know that you really need a teacher, whether it's a Rupert, a Muji, a Course in Miracles, a Great Freedom, the Buddha, Ramana Maharshi, Papaji, Yogananda. But I also feel that your own consciousness, your own readiness to awaken from the dream sends a vibration out into consciousness and is answered by the teacher that it will best help you right now in this experience. I feel it happened for me with A Course in Miracles. It happened for me with Muji. It happened for me with
Yeah.
Rupert, and it has happened with other teachers, other authors, others beings that you just even meet randomly along the path. But I feel very strongly that my consciousness of readiness to awaken sent that vibration out, and it was answered in the form of a book in the beginning.
But to clarify that, when you say my consciousness, it is you consciousness, you, the endless, never beginning, unborn presence of awareness that arises as a Bill mind that is ready.
Yes,
It's
yes.
not your consciousness, not personal. It is the consciousness that you are that seems to arise as an urge, like the prodigal son. He needs to go out into the world, and at a certain point, he decides to turn around and go home. The
Yes.
very turning around is the play of consciousness itself, because mind is an activity of consciousness. And where it goes, that's consciousness.
Well, and
So,
yeah, and in that experience, even though
yes,
it seems to be an individuated expression of or
yes,
modulation of
yes,
consciousness, that individuated expression that's called Bill is not separate from consciousness itself. So,
no,
built within the individuation of the dream
yeah,
is the spark of light that's never been separate from the true light that it is.
yeah,
It's never been separate from consciousness. And that individuated, sleeping, fragmented, or finite experience is called back to itself when it's ready to awaken, when it's ready to relax
right, yes,
back to the source.
yeah,
It started, and that's what we're looking at. I'm looking at the Anneke version of the consciousness here. I'm looking at the Andrea version of consciousness, the David, the Henrik, the Bill. All of us we're individuated expressions of the same
yes,
great rays of God or the
yeah,
light
because yeah,
of our source.
when each of us says I, we're talking about the same I. It's I consciousness.
Yes.
And it's becoming aware of that, and it's the remembering and the recognition. It's like the typical metaphor of the sun and the clouds. The sun is there, but when the clouds start parting, we know it's always been there, and it has even formed the clouds. So yeah, that's so beautiful when you realize, oh, when you say I and I say I, and David and Henrik and everybody says I, we're speaking of the same I. That's the unlimited field of being. It's great.
Yes. Yes.
But you know what? I also had to digest that it is not an entity choosing to be a mind. It is all an impersonal dance, and it can feel personal, but it is impersonal. It's just energy and vibrating and dancing and doing its thing mysteriously.
Yeah.
And that's also that also whips up the question if this mind is the doer. Well, we're starting to discover it's not.
Yes. Yes. The I was in Boston maybe maybe a little more than 6 months ago. I was in Boston at Vicky Poppy's house, and she is a host family for international students. And I was sitting across the table from a young woman that was she's going to university in Boston, and she is part of a team at MIT that works on artificial intelligence, and
Oh yeah.
they work on the mind. And I was asking her, in the artificial intelligence, have they actually located where the mind is?
Great question.
They have not. Artificial intelligence knows that there's an intelligence out there of of that's called mind, but they really have not discovered where the mind is.
No.
And they're trying to mimic it with artificial intelligence. And the truth of the matter is they can look until the cows come home. They will never find it. Yeah. The
I also saw a documentary on that, and it was so interesting because the core question is not touched. It's
yes.
not.
Yes. The Henrik said, or no, David says, we awaken again and again,
Yeah.
each time transitioning from a particular individual to the unbounded.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, time and time again. And it's, I don't know, it's, I need the information. It's helpful for me to have metaphors and examples like Anneke, like you just said, when you're the sky and all of your thoughts and feelings and emotions, all experiences in time and space, all relationships can be seen as clouds and you remain as the sky, then you're not so if affected in a reactionary level to be pulled into the experience of the cloud. Or, as Rupert put it in that workshop that we attended last week, I love this other example that to be the train station, just
Yeah.
you're the train station, and all of these activities of mind are just trains going by,
Yeah.
and you choose whether to give your attention to it or not.
Now don't step in. Don't
Don't,
hop on the train.
don't get in the car unless you want to be the car, unless you want to be the experience, which you will
Yeah.
do. You will do that, but when you can choose which trains to get on, your life is just more fun.
And it's also great to do that on purpose, to take a train of which you know it'll take you to horror, but to see, just see, be aware and see what that does to your system and how it narrows the things and how separate and how that whips up emotions. And then you start to feel sad or whatsoever. It's,
Yes,
you can use everything,
yes,
really.
yes. On page 112, Rupert has a quote, or he has a quote from William Blake, and he said,
Yeah.
as William Blake said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would
Yeah.
appear to man as if it is infinite. That is, if the mind through which the world is perceived is divested of its limitations, it will cease projecting those limitations onto the object, other, or world that it knows or perceives, which will, as a result, stand revealed as infinite. In fact, the object, other, or world will cease being experienced as an object, other, or world, and will be experienced as the radiance of God's infinite, self aware being. And I wrote underneath there that I really feel that that must be what Jesus' experience was when he came 3 days. He came from the tomb and he was witnessed by hundreds of people, touched, and at first they didn't recognize Jesus, but then they realized this was Jesus who had transcended form, fully awake and no longer finite, only infinite self.
Yeah. But of course, that's a metaphor too for everybody, um, for the discovery that we are that.
Yes, yes. And the deeper I feel, the more we actually do practice the experience of awareness, just short moments many times until it becomes an automatic experience, just like we learned how to be a conditioned, finite, personal self-identity, we actually reverse that. We reverse the order of learning to unlearn what we thought we were so that we can know and be what our true self is beyond the body.
But what I find so beautiful of Rupert's teachings is that it happens in the awareness of being aware. So he also, I heard him say on a retreat, first spiritual bypass, first spiritual bypass, first leave it all, the whole process. Don't use it as a process to slowly become pure. And finally, you find that you are aware of being aware.
Yes.
First, discover that. And in that is an ongoing process of alignment with itself or discovering it is already I consciousness and so forth. And that
Yes.
is so um, reassuring or relaxing also. And in that, all sorts of old emotions and old layers of separation can surface. And it has been laid down there for decades. So that can be quite fierce. And that's not a failure, but it's because of the continuous resting as this during the day. Oh, am I aware? Oh, yeah, yeah, I'm aware.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes.
And it's like as if the light turns on brighter and brighter. It's not true. The light is always on, but it is as if it's revealed more and more. And the more light, the more it'll shine on these parts of us that don't feel they are made of light or consciousness.
Yes.
So that's
Until they dissolve into the light, because
right.
as they
Yes.
as the light is always doing the work.
Yes.
The and it's really
Yes.
not work. Just
Yeah.
the light is always, it's like creation. It never stops creating.
Yes.
And so the more light that comes in, the more understanding that we have. And there's an old New Testament verse that Jesus was said to say that in my Father's house are many mansions.
Yes.
If it were not so, I would have told you. And in my mind, this is the ever evolving experience of consciousness in the many mansions of discovery, in the many mansions of, and you could call it maybe dimensions of vibration or dimensions of of,
Anything.
of
Yeah.
but it is it that this is why there's so much. This is, in my mind, this is why there's this inspired excitement and joy about the discovery of these and investigation of the words that Rupert puts in a book.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
enlightened version, this master of my own consciousness that I call Rupert, has delivered to me, Bill, in time
Yes.
and space, an understanding to expand the dimensions of the infinite,
Yes.
so that I can not only learn it, but also have a direct experience.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
from yours, not different from Muji's, not different from Rupert's. We all have access to the same direct experience as
Yeah.
everyone else on
Yes.
on the planet.
I sometimes write him and then I thank him for being here. And, and he knows what I mean by that because thanking that consciousness can arise as a Rupert mind to show Anne's mind that we're both I. So
Yes,
yes, it's
yes,
it's just a miracle. But I also know that anything that arises, anything consciousness can be anything. And I also discover that I consciousness even know that silent state. I even know when there is nothing. That's so interesting.
yes,
To it is really undescribable, indescribable. It even knows that state where no thing is. It is beyond and
yes,
beyond. But it can also focus into. in the tightest, darkest shit, so to say. Man. So, yeah.
And Andrea says, I love how the experience has the modulated mirroring of consciousness, such as our experiences of dreaming, gives us the clues
Yeah.
and pointing back to our I as awareness. Yes, yes. Have you ever done the lucid? I used to practice right when I found the course, I used to practice lucid dreaming. And I would actually wake up within a dream and I would cause the dream. I would fly. Things would happen in the dream, and I'd say, "Oh, I know what's happening here." And I would actually
Yeah.
wake up in the dream, and I would cause the dream. I could like jump, and you might jump over a puddle. Well, I would jump 50 feet.
The same here. I have the same experience.
You
I
have,
would wake up in a dream. I would, by by strength of thought, by focusing thought, the
yes.
foot would push on the floor, and I would fly above the city where I was. And then I could, by thought, I could lower again. And then I thought, oh, let's try again. Whew! I had that for a period. Oh, that's weird. Okay, sorry. But this is still an experience in consciousness.
Wow. Well, we're a little bit off
Uh,
topic here.
sorry,
Just
sorry.
back, I did that. So sorry, you guys. Uh, the David says it's so good to be in a book club run by folks who truly understand what is being considered here. Thank you, and it also goes with you guys too. It's
Yeah.
so. I mean, I do this out of the excitement of doing it. I didn't know how it was going to, go off. Doing a book club with Rupert's content, but it's so rich. I mean, all it does is I sit down. I've read the book a couple of times, but when I get ready to talk on this program, I go back into the material and I just want to just take in again in the depth of Rupert's writing what the material is really offering me here, and it's offering me just a deeper look and through my own looking through my own investigation. I'm sure it's the same for you, Anneke. As you look into the content of Rupert's material, it causes you to have an experience in and with the material. Yes?
Yes, or I check, I explore. So what I do when you invite me to be a co-host for a chapter, I have read everything and I reread and so forth. You have seen the circles and the lines, but then I'm very much somebody who expresses. I'm an artist, and so I start speaking out loud on my own in my house and telling myself what have I really understood and what do I know out of my own experience, and I tell myself what I know. So it's again a reconfirming of what is my own experience, and what is not my own experience yet will reveal itself. I mean, or not.
Well,
Just let that be.
yes, and that's I think that's where I want to use the word magic. I think that's where the beautiful nature of Rupert's teaching brings all of us to, and that is the direct experience of the being, the direct experience of the self, the self awareness. You can call it by many names: self, God is, being, the light,
Present,
presence. You
whatever.
can
Yeah.
call it joy, you can call it love. It's the peace of God. It has thousands of beautiful names. They're all pointing to the same I. They're all pointing to the same I experience of 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 what I am because I am what God is.
Yeah.
I absolutely am, and so are you, because we're not separate. We're the same one using a maybe a different voice in this expression, but I am what God is. And each one of us and every living thing and every expression, every modulation, every extraction of everything is the same. I am what God is. It can't not be that. It says here, that, I mean, there's an example that Rupert gives on page 114 where he gives an example of experiencing what we say. It's in the third paragraph, and he says, to know form or manifestation, consciousness must focus its knowing or attention in a particular direction for a specific object, a thought, an image, a feeling, a sensation, or perception to come into the field of experience. Consciousness must contract within itself, focusing and thus limiting its knowing in the form of attention. As such, attention brings form into existence out of the formless
Yeah.
field of infinite
Yeah.
consciousness.
And that's also beautiful because you can do little practices with that. Attention is made of awareness. Attention is awareness.
Yes.
And imagine we all would think right now of the street outside. The street is there. When we would think of our bedroom, bedroom's there. When we think of our hands, hands are there. Where attention goes, I become. I heard Rupert say that too.
Yes.
Where attention goes, I become. Because when we think of a thought, attention goes to a thought. It's not in the bedroom, it's in the thought. Where attention goes, I am. And because attention is made out of I consciousness, where attention goes, I am. So he also says attention is mind, is experience. So it's like a flashlight, you know, attention. It's you can try, just try with your attention. And there's also people that say, well, if attention goes to my living room right now, who says a bathroom exists? It's interesting. I don't know, but it's just all contemplation, playing with it, finding out for yourself, not believing. Where belief is, there's also disbelief. Just finding out, and there is no wrong here. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Well, and in the same way, when you relax your attention, and this is the beauty of knowing the self. This is the beauty of knowing the I am, or having the full experience of awareness, is when you relax your attention from
yeah,
objective experience, when you relax your attention from any any anything that's going on, you actually relax into the peace of God.
yeah,
You actually relax into the eternal
yeah,
nature of
yeah.
peace, of love, and it also has a feeling. It has a feeling that is non-objective. And I feel that awareness even has its own experience of a feeling that is non-objective and
Yeah.
non-sensory.
Not literally, but the isness, and that's so beautiful, already has the potential to be everything. So that very isness is, and that has a certain quality to it.
Yes.
and that is love or peace
Yeah.
or
Yeah. That must be what that's the common experience that humans have in time is we call it love, and it can be mistaken
yeah,
for physical
yeah,
experience, but I feel that it's a
yeah.
modulated uh, expression of the essence of being that is an experience.
You know what he says in one of the meditations about that? He says people think that exert, a certain experience brings love or joy or happiness. But because of those experiences that are so beautiful, we don't separate ourselves from it. That's why it's called love. But the experiences that are horrific or challenging or uncomfortable, we tend to separate out because we don't want that. We think it's not God or not light or whatsoever. So there is this sense of separation. And that hurts. That is the unhappiness,
Yes.
not the feeling itself. And when we go into the feeling or we let the feeling come into us, then we discover they're made of the same. And that's what he tries to bring forth in this book.
Yes. It's brilliant. And Andrea says, I have always been, we're talking about lucid dreaming again. I have always been lucid dreamer. I comment on the dreams to the dreamer. This is something that helps me in my awareness. I talk to myself, like you were saying, Anneke, all day in the same way, awareness talking to the modulation known as Andrea, awareness being aware of Andrea, and I am simultaneously. Yes, yes. That's having the cake and eating it too. This is where we actually experience what the Course calls the real world experience, where we're as Jesus said in another New Testament quote or comment, is that we're in the world, but not
Not
of the.
all. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the experience that we get in the knowing of our true divine nature. And yeah, this book has been so good. And he also on page 114, that below that paragraph that I read, he says he gives an example. And I tried this example when I read it. He says, for instance, the tingling sensation at the tips of your fingers didn't come into existence the moment you read these words. It was there all along, but eclipsed by your interest in these words. And that's giving attention to, getting on the train of of giving my awareness and to the tingling or to the sensation is joining the sensation as experience. I become that. I become the experience. Yeah.
That's it. And that's why when attention doesn't attend objects anymore, but relaxes its movement, so to say, then it's the pure awareness again.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
the miracle. Hmm.
Well, we have about 1 minute left on the show, and how would you sum up or summarize what is your most favorite part of this chapter, Anneke?
Well, that was the very beginning I started reading.
Okay.
That says it all. Mind is consciousness in motion. Consciousness is mind at rest. That is it. And yeah, there's so much beauty in it. I could talk on for 2 more hours and just read the whole book or the whole chapter, word for word.
Yes.
But and that what I also already said, it arises in consciousness, it's known by consciousness, and it's made out of. And we discover that not it's not one way, like first you see this, then you see that. No, it happens. It's life, zooming in, zooming out, contracting, opening, revealing, closing. That is an ongoing um, yeah, it's not even happening, but it's an ongoing play of itself. And we are, yeah, we are an activity of that very life discovering its own being. And yeah, that's a gift, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, I think that concludes our book club show study for this week. Thank you all for joining with us. Next week is chapter 13. There are no states of consciousness. And wow, that's a title. There are no
There
states.
are no states.
There are
No,
states of consciousness.
there's only one.
Yes.
And that's not even a state.
Thank you all for
So,
joining with me and with us this week. I'm not sure who our guest is next week. It could be Jenny, could be Kimberly, could be Andrea,
Andrea,
whomever you are. If you know who you are and you would like to be our guest next week, please write me at billfreeonline@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to have you as a guest. And I haven't reached out to anyone, but I'm open to someone new if there's someone new that would like to be on the show. And thank you, Anneke, for being an awesome guest once again. Thank you all for joining with us. And until
yes,
next
thank
week,
you.
I will see you then. I love you all. Bye bye.
Bye bye.